We'll get started in a minute here, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll take a minute more, let people sort of give people a chance to jump in, and then we'll go from there and get started. Explain what we're going to do and everything. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Give it about 30 seconds more, maybe, and then we'll start. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Get started in a minute here. Right, Doug, what do you think? Get started here, maybe? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So thank you, everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. I think some people will jump in. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and a number of new students and families. So welcome to all of you. It's great to see you. Lots of smiling faces. It's good to see you. I've missed seeing you guys. So I do want to let everybody know we're recording this. We're recording this so we can get it up on the website, and people who aren't able to join us are gonna can track it that way after the fact. So we hope that will be helpful for people. So thanks for understanding that. We do have right now everybody muted, so that there's not that Zoom thing where there's a bunch of background noise and those sorts of things that make it hard to hear what's going on. We have some relatively quick presentations we're going to do, and then we will, as we get about the second half of this, we'll open up the chat feature and use that as a way for people to ask us questions that we can answer. So tonight, I think I might be repetitive in saying this to what will get said. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to review some things that were in the document that's up on our website. So some of you may have seen this document. I hope that you've had a chance to take a look at it. There's a lot of thought that went into that and a lot of detail in that. Having said that, we also know that things are constantly evolving. We're not going to talk a lot about this tonight because we haven't had time to process it, but the Illinois Department of Public Health just put out more guidance at about 3:30 this afternoon that we're in the middle of processing. I want to thank everybody for understanding how this process works. We're all learning about this situation together. Normally, we wouldn't be doing things like this over a computer, for example. It would be, I would like nothing more actually than to be doing this together in person. But so thanks to everybody for understanding that. Tonight is not going to be a night, I don't think, to get individual questions about an individual situation answered. I think we're gonna keep it at a sort of at a high level. Having said that, though, please accept right off the bat the open invitation to contact any of us for whom you have questions, and we look forward to interacting in an individual level if that makes sense. So please don't leave questions unanswered for sure. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to do, and then I'll be quiet and let you hear from more important people. So we're going to start out with my name's Seth Hanford, by the way. I'm head of school at the Academy. I think I know most of you. I see some new faces. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. This is, as I said, not normally how we would do this, but we really look forward to seeing you soon. And many of you I have had a chance to meet, so welcome. We're thrilled you're here. If you're returning, I hope you've had a great summer. I know it's been a different summer. Summer's still ongoing. Let's hold on to the last days of it here. But it is great to see all of you. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have a couple of presentations. We're going to do one that hits Cut will start us off. She's our head of school for external affairs, and she'll start out by talking about the campus and the safety protocols and various things. Doug Sept will lead our discussion about the academic program, but you'll hear a little bit from some other people. I want to thank, there have been a number of people, so many people involved in our getting the campus to a point where we feel like we can reopen, and I couldn't list everybody here for sure, but there are so many people who have been involved in that, and I'm really thankful. I just want to address it at a high level, where we are in our thinking and why we think, as it stands now, we can open in person. I want to be very forthright with you. You know, certainly that could change, right? That this environment is changing. We're learning all the time. We are going to continue to make decisions on an almost daily basis about what is happening. But we believe, as it stands right now, and as the numbers are what they are, again, right now, we believe that the combination of space on the campus, the small class size, the schedule, the ability to be adaptable that we have because of our small size, the attention we've given to the details, that we believe that we can safely start in person. I am sure all of you have noted the ability to begin by studying online. If you would like to do that, that is of course okay. It will not be exactly the same, certainly, but it will be an excellent thing, just like it is in the classroom. And so we're very much supportive of that idea, but we believe that we can be in person and can mitigate those risks to some level. There certainly is risk, and we know that. We can't we are not pretending to ignore that, and that's why we have so many protocols and things in place. So as things stand right now, we believe very much that we can start this off in person in late August. Can that change? Absolutely. Do we ask that question anew every day? I can promise you we do, because nothing's more important than those issues of safety, and of course that is our is an emphasis. We are trying, like every school, I believe, in the world is at this point, and I think that might actually be a true statement, not hyperbole. We are trying to juggle all of those aspects with what is a really intense desire to be together on campus, knowing how great that is. And right now, we think that's where we're going to be, and we will certainly continue to let you know as our thinking develops. I would urge you to read the stuff we send out and really pay close attention, because we are watching this all the time. So thanks so much, not only for being here tonight, but for being here at Elgin Academy. Here's what that looks like. It's out that window there. You can sort of see through the screen. That's what it looks like. It's beautiful tonight. It's a beautiful night. It's going to be beautiful on August 27th. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn things over to Marnie and let her start. And then again, we will, if you have questions in your mind, we will certainly open up the chat at the end as we get towards the end of our presentations. And we very much look forward to the chance to talk this evening. So thanks so much. And Marnie, take it away.
Thank you. So I'm Marnie Cutt. I'm the Assistant Head of School for External Affairs. That's my second year in that role, but I've been at Elgin Academy for 10 years. And right now what I'm doing here is I'm managing all the non-academic departments, which includes the facilities and maintenance group. And so there's been a lot of work done this summer with a large variety of people to think about the protocols of, getting everybody back to campus safely. I have one daughter who started here in preschool, who is in 8th grade this year, so I'm a fellow middle school parent, sort of in awe of the fact that we're sort of knocking on the door of upper school, to be honest with you, but here we are, and I'm looking forward to having her back on campus with everybody. So I just want to talk a little bit about the plan and some high level things. We're not going to get into all of the details this evening, but just sort of pick out some of the key features from the plan that we have. So one thing that we really want to emphasize is that we are combining many layers of safety. This isn't just about one thing that's going to keep us all, at the lowest risk possible. So it's the creative use of the classroom space. We're going to increase the usage of the outdoor space. Each division is going to be kept in their separate buildings, so to minimize sort of that that risk of transmission when kids are moving around campus. Social distancing, face coverings, good health and hygiene practices, all of these things are going to work together to make our whole community safe. It's really important for us that everybody in the community is working together towards this goal to make the campus as safe as possible. We also know that there is going to be risk, right? We can mitigate, but we cannot completely eliminate the risk. So I do want to make you aware that all community members, and this includes families and faculty and staff, are going to be asked to sign a waiver before returning to campus. And you'll get some information about that shortly, but we will need that to be returned before the first day of school. And so we ask that you return that as quickly as possible. It can either be emailed back to us, and we'll give you directions for that, or mailed. And, you know, a few days before school starts, if we don't get them, we'll start calling you because it's really important to us that you have that. So moving on, so face coverings. Face coverings must be worn at all times except when students are eating. For now, this is going to include even when the students are outside. We're going to monitor that, and we might refine that a little bit as we're moving on, but really what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to create a habit of mask wearing, right? So we want this to become second nature to all of our students. So we're thinking the more we have it on, the more they will be able to kind of be used to it and not think of it as a sort of an imposition. Obviously, when they're eating, they're not going to wear the masks, but we do want them the rest of the time. We do have a handful of face coverings that are not approved, and those include bandanas, gaiters, and masks with one-way valves. There's been a number of studies that have shown that they're not as effective as other forms of masks or other face coverings. And the mask with a one-way valve is the one that has the little black plastic circular piece on it. Those in combination with the bandanas and the gaiters are just not shown to be as effective. So we want everybody to be wearing the masks that, you know, with the 2 layers and the cotton, you know, the sort of more traditional looking mask. Everybody, faculty, staff, and students will be asked to self-certify each time they come to campus that they do not have symptoms and have not been exposed to somebody who is positive with COVID-19. Again, we're all in this together. It's a community built on trust. We really need everybody to do this. You will get access to an app. Middle school students none of the students are actually going to be allowed to fill it out for themselves. The parent will have to fill it out for the student. That is per state guidelines. That's not per us, that's per the state. And each time you fill out the app, once the student passes the app, there'll be an icon that is sent to your phone or wherever that says, that you passed. You can forward that to your student if you think that's more efficient, but you have to fill that out yourself. Every student will be checked in Carline, and we're going to go through Carline in a little bit more details to follow. You cannot leave campus until your student has been cleared that shows that they have passed the app for the day. So it's really, really important that you stay with your student until somebody can check and see, because we really want to make sure that people are not coming to school with any COVID symptoms. Again, you have to fill that out for the student, but we do need that to be done every day. We at this point are not going to have parents come into the classroom buildings. So, oftentimes there's parents in the classroom buildings on the first day of school or whatever. You cannot, unfortunately. We just need all of the kids to go and be sort of with their cohorts and with their grades, and have the parents stay outside. So please plan on dropping your student off in Carline on that day. When should a student stay home? So we really need to start thinking about changing our way of thinking, right? Even if it's just a little sniffle, please do not send your student to school. First of all, sniffles or sort of a runny nose and congestion is a potential symptom of COVID, right? So there's many, many symptoms, including fever, cough, shortness of breath, nausea, congestion, runny nose. So, and among a longer list of that, if you have any of those things, please do not send your student to school. We are set up this year where if your student is feeling a little bit under the weather, they can learn online. They can move to the remote learning for that day. So where they're not going to miss school, they're not going to miss the education, but we really need everybody to work together to make sure that's happening. And then if a student obviously is tested positive for COVID, which I'll talk about in a little bit, or is living with somebody who's tested positive, they cannot attend school either. So we might sometimes have to close down. Each grade in middle school is going to be its own cohort. So a cohort means the group of students that stay together all day long. So you could say like 5th grade is a cohort or 7th grade is a cohort, and that way we can sort of isolate and minimize the risk of transmission. So if a student becomes symptomatic in, say, 5th grade, we don't need to send all of the students home. We only need to send that 5th grade class home. So if a cohort member develops symptoms, either in school or out of school, right? So either they've come down with a fever at school, or somebody has reported that they have, potential COVID, that cohort is going to move to connected or remote learning for a minimum of 48 hours. This allows time for that individual to see a physician, seek additional medical information, potentially get tested, all of that, and also gives us time to clean. We're setting that guideline at 48 hours, so you have a degree of predictability as well. Always it's going to be at least 48 hours. That gives us time to additionally communicate with you and let you know what the next steps might be for your cohort and for how long you might need to continue that connected learning. There might be, and obviously if somebody is diagnosed with COVID-19, that cohort will have to move to connected learning as well. We are still getting some final guidelines from the county health department, the state health department, about some other reasons why we might close. So if a certain percentage of community members test positive, or there's other internal, external measures, the county health department might call us and say, we have to shut the school down. Or if not shut it down, but move to connected learning. Or if there's a government mandate, from the state, we would then have to move to connected learning as well. So we have to be really, really kind of vigilant about and making sure everybody's following our communications so that you know where you are and what's happening with your cohort or the school as a whole. If your child develops symptoms at school, we have built what we're calling isolation rooms, but we got some feedback last night that maybe that wasn't the kindest word. So a room where a student can go and be away from the rest of their cohort or their other peers in the school. And if that would mean they would have to be asked to go there if they're exhibiting any of these potential COVID-19 symptoms. So that includes a runny nose, nausea, things like that. There are possibilities if a student has sort of a pre-existing condition, such as allergies or something, where we can get some documentation and work with the family so that every time the student is reporting something like that, we're not necessarily, triggering all of the COVID steps. But in general, if it's sort of an out of the blue kind of symptom, we are going to have to put this student in a room off on their own, where they will be supervised, obviously, but sort of kept apart. And then you will be contacted, and we're asking that you come and pick up your student within an hour. Again, because we want to make sure that we have that student move off campus as quickly as possible to, again, mitigate that chance for transmission. The same is going to hold true for a staff member. If a staff member develops symptoms, they are also going to be asked to move off campus really quickly. So we really want to hold firm with that. And then the remainder of the cohort will be sent home for that minimum of 48 hours, again, to sort of make sure we can go through all of the steps. When a student can come back is actually a little bit convoluted. There's a lot of different instances. If you've gotten a negative COVID test, you can come right back. If you've tested positive for COVID, it triggers a number of days at home. And what we're going to do actually is we're going to develop a cheat sheet for everybody, page and a half maybe, that sort of lays all of these out, and you can have it as a reference, because there is a lot of different things that are moving all the time. We got some additional information today, like Seth said, from the IDPH, and we're going to use that to build the most up-to-date list that we can. The one thing that the IDPH did make very, very clear today too is if your student has these symptoms, they are going to be asked by a physician to be tested for COVID. We are going to have to ask them to be tested for COVID-19. So that is something that became a little bit clarified from the IDPH today, and we're looking at some other things that are maybe changing. So some of the information that was in that document, we're continuing to refine as we learn and get additional information. So we will be sharing that and posting that on our website as well. Excuse me. So moving on to some other logistical things. We are going to make a switch to middle school Carline this year in order to have the personnel available to be checking all the phones and checking to make sure that everybody has passed that symptom checker. The middle school Carline for drop-off is going to be moved to the top of Academy Place. So all students are going to be dropped off at the top of Academy, where the lower school Carline is. And so that means we can have everybody checking that side. Car line on College will not be open. We are going to stagger the starts of the car lines to allow for a little bit better traffic flow. The middle school car line and the upper school car line are going to start at the same time. They're going to start at 7:45. Please don't come before 7:45 if at all possible. The lower school car line is going to start a little bit later. So, ideally if you can come between that 7:45, 8 o'clock time, that's the best. That will help us make sure that we can move students through as quickly as possible. Again, you cannot leave until we know that your student has passed the screening test. And we're going to have real-time information too about that screening test. We're going to know who hasn't passed. We're going to know who hasn't filled it out. So we're going to have some information too, but it'd really be helpful for us if you can get that information to us as quickly as possible. Car line is definitely one of those things we're going to be reviewing over the course of the year and seeing how it's working and making sure it's working efficiently. And so there might be some tweaks or some transitions to it as we kind of learn more, but this is the plan for the start. The pickup is going to be in the same place where you've always picked up middle school students, which is on College Street. But we're going to ask that middle school students sort of assemble on the quad in their cohort at their grade levels, so that while they're waiting for to be picked up by their parents, so that we can kind of try to keep them sort of in smaller groups. If you have a middle school student who also has a lower school sibling, the middle school student can come over to the lower school side to be picked up like they were before. We are, really committed to keeping you as updated as possible with the most information as we can. So please be paying attention to email blasts when we send them out. That is how we're going to be notifying about when a cohort has to close. So please pay attention. Pay attention to EA news and notes. That's where we're going to make updates to the plan. That's where we're going to have sort of regular kind of communications that aren't, don't need to happen right away, but need to happen pretty regularly. So we ask that you please read EA News and Notes every week. There'll be a section with any kind of community updates that we have. All of that will also be posted on our website. So we have what's called community updates now, the section on the website, and that's where all of our COVID-19 correspondence is going to be kept. So you can go back and look at all, everything we've already said and any new updates. And so, we really hope that you can keep a good eye on that, so we know that we're getting the information out to you. That sort of covers my section, so I can give it back to Doug.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. So I'm Doug Sept. I'm the Assistant Head of School for Academic Affairs. I'm going into my 9th year at EA. My 25th year overall in education, spent largely at 2 independent schools. So Elgin Academy, of course, where I've interacted with a number of you or have met a number of you in my previous role as upper school director. At my previous independent school, where I was 10 years, I played a variety of teaching and administrative roles in divisions covering grades 6 through 12. So I do have significant middle school experience as well, and I look forward to kind of rejoining those grade levels and working with the great team of middle school faculty here. I'm also an EA parent. Since we've been here, my son, Alex, started in grade 3. He's going to be a junior this year. My daughter, Kate, started in grade 1. She's going to be in grade 9. So I've had 2 children have the full EA middle school experience. So I've seen that as a parent as well. And I share that with all of you. So my role is to oversee and facilitate the academic program for the entire campus, grades preschool through 12. And the way that I'm able to do that is really because I'm working with a couple of great collaborative groups of faculty members, some of whom are here tonight. So there's a group of members I work with called the Faculty Innovation Team. We actually got up and running right about the time we left campus in March, and they were invaluable in helping all of our teachers adapt to online learning, and also in helping meet this summer to put into place some of the policies and procedures we're putting in this year. The Faculty Innovation Team includes teachers from all divisions. From the middle school, the people who are involved in that are Jessica Brown, Miriam Nasser, and Susie Howell. They also, moving forward, continue with curriculum development and professional development. So really a great group of people who are really adept at teaching all ages that are here on campus. I also work closely with the student support team. The student support team focuses more on social and emotional growth for students and specific student needs. Once again, that includes people from all divisions. From the middle school specifically, Jessica Brown and Janet Hughes are a part of that. And I'll say a few words about both of them later as they're joining us this evening, and Helen Elion as well. So your children are supported very well, both academically and socially, emotionally. So I'd like to focus first off on the academic program. For the academic program, I first want to acknowledge that the middle school curriculum remains largely the same this year. Everything that your children were expecting to learn this year is still going to be learned. Every milestone they were wanting to pass in every subject area, it's exactly going to happen. As you're aware, though, we have made significant changes in the timing of when that's going to happen and in the physical location of where that's going to happen. And we've done that in order to create a healthy campus environment. We've done that also in acknowledgement of the fact that things are pretty stressful right now for everyone, and especially for preteens and teens in the middle school years, even if they're not willing to admit it. The uncertainty of the world of COVID can provide some external stressors for them. So whatever we can do to help them continue to have good experiences in learning and engaging with others, we're doing our best to do that. So I want to take a moment and I want to discuss those changes in time and space and kind of explain the rationale behind those. I'm going to echo what Seth said earlier. I'm really hitting this from kind of an overall level, and I do respect that every student is their own individual learner. So I do welcome, if while tonight is not the venue for me to address an individual parent's questions about their child's experience, I am more than happy to meet with any family virtually or in person if we want to try to arrange a time before school year starts, or where we can sit and talk and I can learn more about you and your child. We can talk through what their year experience is going to be like, and I can address any questions or thoughts that you have heading into this. I'll make sure that by the end of the evening, my email goes up in the chat, although it is also accessible in a number of places on the website. So first off, let me talk about the changes in time. The changes in time is the trimester system. I know the word trimester is nothing new in the middle school, since that's the term system they've worked on in the past. But what makes this trimester system different is the amount of classes students are taking at any given time. As you saw, I did both in the reopening document, and then every middle school family should have received a copy of a schedule late on Monday afternoon. Every trimester, a student is taking 2 immersive classes as well as 1 class year long. The immersive classes, the cumulative time that they're spending within those classes is equivalent to a year-long class. So whatever class your child used to take for a year, if they're only taking for a third of the year, the classroom minutes is equivalent. The advantages to this system. First off, it does provide fewer campus interactions between students and faculty during the day. In our previous schedule that worked well in a non-COVID environment, students were going to 7 different classes in the day. Teachers were teaching 5 or 6 different classes in the day. This year, it will be a maximum of 3 per day. That does provide for fewer interactions and crossovers, especially as we try to work with the cohort system. It also, and this lends itself to kind of the stress aspect, it's fewer academic responsibilities for students to balance at any one given time. Executive functioning and balancing different classes is something that students learn throughout the middle school year. And what we're trying to do for this year is help them with that by having them involved in 3 academic responsibilities at any given time. Now, academically, what that means is they're going to have more time for reflection on fewer subjects, and they have to process less disparate information throughout the whole day. It can be a challenge for learners of any age, but especially middle school, to go to 7 different classes and try to keep all of that straight. Those intense classes will help promote better learning. Homework as well, which you'll still continue to see this year. Their homework will be focused in 2 to 3 subjects instead of 5 to 7. Certainly, we don't anticipate they're going to have more homework, but it may be an equivalent amount of time, but simply they're focused a little more in depth in 2 to 3 areas on any given night. So again, giving students a better balance for learning. Another positive about the trimester system is teachers will be working with fewer students in any trimester, which gives them an opportunity for more individualization as well as more communication with families. Communication with families, of course, is very important in terms of informal back and forth. So teachers are always reaching out to parents. Parents are always welcome to contact teachers. Formally, I will let you know, and we'll put this in writing in some of the things we talk about as we're heading into the school year. Middle school parents can anticipate seeing open grade books every Friday. Last year, it was every other Friday. This year, it's going to be every Friday. They can anticipate narrative comments about every 3 weeks. So because of the accelerated class nature, we want to make sure we're giving you more frequent feedback in terms of updated grades and comments. And then of course that individual communication will thrive because teachers at any given time are working with only 2 to 3 classes of students as opposed to 5 or 7. So they're able to give more attention to those fewer students they're working with. Another reason we chose to go with this schedule is it does transition well to either on-campus or online learning. And as you heard Marnie say, we anticipate that there will be times where cohorts or individual students, either by choice or because of symptoms, or potentially if something were to happen that the whole school has to close, we anticipate there's going to be a need for online learning. Last year, you may recall, heading into March, when we went to online learning, we switched up the schedule to be one that fit better for online learning. Well, the fact is, we knew at that point in time that our daily schedule that happened on campus is not a good one for online. It is not good to have students going to 6 or 7 different classes a day virtually. On the other hand, the schedule that we did online for that short time is not one that would transition well onto campus. As you're aware, it had a lot of open time for students to work. And while it was appropriate for a home-based setting, it would be appropriate in a year where especially giving students a lot of free time would not be a healthy decision. And so we knew we had to make a change to a schedule that would work well both on and off campus. So this is the schedule we plan to keep no matter which version we're in. So if your child is going to be an off-campus learner to begin the year, and families do have that choice, they can anticipate working essentially on this same schedule. And I'll talk a little later about what that might look like. When we're on campus, this is our schedule. If a cohort has to move off campus, they'll still have this same schedule. If a whole school has to move off campus, we will still have this same schedule. So let me talk about the concern. A concern about the trimester system that I anticipated hearing, and I have heard some so far, is my child will only have a certain subject for a third of the year. And the most common subjects people plug into that statement are math and world language, because they're concerned about a loss of continuity in learning. I understand your concern, but I also feel that our faculty are going to do some wonderful things to address that concern. And I'd like to talk through some of those things. The first is that our faculty teach for long-term understanding. Nobody here is teaching just for the short term or just to get students to understand something for the end of the week or for an end of the unit test or something of that sort. And here's some of the techniques our faculty are already adept at using and will continue to use even more this year. They know how to help students practice retrieval learning, the idea of spiraling or scaffolding, that you go back and revisit a concept and you build upon it. And not only, you don't do that necessarily in the short term, but you make sure there's spacing between that. So as the trimester continues, you continue to go back to those most important concepts to really help them embed them in long-term memory. Another piece is that longer class periods, which we are going to have this year, do provide for more diverse learning opportunities. Students are able to play with the concepts in several different ways to make connections between them. I assure you that 130-minute block periods is not 130 minutes of teacher-centric instruction. It is also not for online learning. It's not a 130-minute Zoom. That's not good for anybody. Teachers will understand how to break up that period into chunks, all geared toward the same learning goals, but doing different things along the way. So online might look like some full class Zoom, some small group Zoom, some individual work, maybe even some teacher one-on-one conversations with students along the way. Our teachers will also, in a very challenging year, do their best to incorporate movement as much as possible. We understand that middle school students are not designed to sit still for 130 minutes. Obviously, within a classroom, we are limited by the amount of space we can have. Thankfully, we're on a campus that has a wonderful quad area. And I will encourage all middle school teachers and welcome them that at any point in time during their class period, if they feel like a move outside is a good thing to do for a little while, whether that move is learning related to their curriculum, or it's simply a chance to get students up and moving around, because we do know that physical movement does kick in better mental learning, then I will encourage them to do that. The one piece, of course, we'll make sure we avoid is that the whole middle school dumps out to the quad at once and suddenly we've lost the ability to socially distance. Our teachers will do a wonderful job with it. A block class, a longer class, does also allow significant time for what we refer to in education as openers and closers. So openers are an opportunity to prime the class for learning. It might be reaching back to what was done the previous day or several days ago, again, to kind of spiral that back in and talk about how we're going to build on it. It gives time to talk about what the learning goal is for that day, so students really have a focus on all these different activities they might do in a block period, how they're all going to feed together. And then closure is very important because it helps the students reflect on what they've learned and also to reflect on what were the most important pieces of today I need to know moving forward. And a block period allows plenty of time for both of those to happen in really authentic ways. Shorter periods don't always allow great time for those things to happen. And finally, I will let you know that I've never worked with a faculty who is hungry to grow professionally as this group of people. I knew this already before, but I'm amazed at the amount of time people have put in this summer to prepare for this school year in teaching. Two specific ones I can point to, two specific concepts I can point to. Last year, heading into the school year, all of us took part in a conference that was held on campus called Teaching in an Extended Period. We're going to revisit those concepts. We're going to do our own spiraling as faculty back to that to make sure that we remind ourselves and recall what is so important to do in extended periods that will help promote student learning. And then finally, a number of our faculty members did a webinar, a 2-week spread out synchronous and asynchronous webinar called ISM Virtual Teaching, as they wanted to continue to improve upon being teachers in an age where teaching virtually has to be part of our toolbox. And so we're going to spend some time before school starts revisiting both of those ideas as well as others. And the amount of collaboration that happens between our faculty is just amazing. Those reasons all lead me to think that our students are going to be set up for long-term understanding because our teachers know how to teach for that. We also are going to provide opportunities for engagement beyond class. We do have an exploratory system in the middle school. I realize the schedules I sent out, grades 7 and 8 actually had a spot in them for exploratory. Grade 5 and 6 did not. That's not indicative of the fact that they're not going to have exploratory. They will. Jessica and Janet and I are working to figure where in the day it might happen. They will likely overlap with some lunch recess. There's kind of an hour-long block each day to allow for that time. Exploratories are going to be grade level based, at least for the first trimester, to continue with the cohorting system. But it is a place where we can offer some academic experiences for students, especially if they're in their off trimester. So for example, some of you may be aware that my background is mathematics. I teach a math class in the upper school. I do plan to offer math-based exploratories in each trimester this year for students who would like to engage in a mathematics exploratory to keep fresh with some ideas and ideas that I know will be important as they continue their growth through middle school mathematics. We're also going to be looking at what sort of co-curricular opportunities could we offer during lunch. So not necessarily as part of the the exploratory system, but during that span of lunch, are there teachers that want to host help sessions for certain students in certain grade levels or other opportunities that would allow them to continue to engage in some of these subject areas in trimesters they're not taking them. We also have plans to create a bank of online resources for students and families that they can access at their choice. This to me is kind of akin to how the math department in the middle school often has suggestions for some materials families can use over the summer if they wish to kind of keep up with some math. We will create, and it'll be kind of early in the school year, but probably a couple weeks after school begins, we'll find a way to create and publicize some great websites, some resources, places where if you as a family or your child want to explore and engage in a subject, especially one that they're not taking at that point in time, they'll have the opportunity to do that. And of course, the faculty will do a wonderful job of identifying and supporting students who may need remediation in an off trimester, and we'll work out a way to make sure that that happens for that student. I will say that the trimester system, we think it's a really good fit for this year for all the reasons I've outlined above, but like anything we do in this school, and this is my philosophy, we should evaluate as it goes along. So we are gonna evaluate this system this year, both with respect to how it's doing in the age of COVID for students, as well as how it's doing for learning for students. And then we will determine, especially considering where things are within the span of COVID, what would be the best system for us in the next school year. The other major change was a change in space. As was alluded to, with students being in cohorts, and for any of you that have been in Sears Hall, it's a wonderful building, but it does have some fairly small spaces. Its hallways and a lot of its classrooms are small, and they wouldn't work out well for spacing. So what we've done is we've identified the biggest spaces in that building for student learning, and those are going to become grade level learning spaces. You should have seen on the schedules I sent out, I've identified room numbers. I'll just give a brief overview. This is first trimester. So for the first trimester, fifth graders are going to be located in Miriam Nasser's science room on the 3rd floor. We've chosen that space because they are taking science that trimester, and that'll be very important for them to be able to have that space available. So they'll take all of their classes up there. 6th grade is going to be in the writer room. And if you've been in the writer room before, you know it's a kind of a general purpose room. We are repurposing it as a classroom space. I actually visited today, and our maintenance department is doing a wonderful job putting everything in there that faculty and students would need in order to make it be a classroom. Our 7th graders for the first trimester are going to be in the other science room, Mr. O'Connor Dybelvis's science room on the west end of the 3rd hallway. And then our 8th grade students are going to pretty much have the 1st floor. There's 2 main rooms at each end of the 1st floor because our 8th grade is large enough to have 2 sections. One group is going to be in the IDEA lab that we set up last year, and will be a wonderful space for learning. And the other side is the conference room, which once again, we are transforming that into a classroom that has all of the seating and technology needs necessary for middle school teachers and students to learn. I'm also working on trying to create a breakout space potentially in the dining room area for 8th grade students and teachers. Since we aren't going to be using the dining room as a place to eat this year, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, it might be a space where we can have some social distancing, but allow smaller groups to come out so that we can have collaborative work. Again, all of those rooms are being set up, and I should mention, and this goes back to the online learning, we are also fortunate enough to have a parent who's working with us who's very adept at technology, and we are setting up classroom camera systems. So if your child is at home learning, so this could be because you're making the choice to have them do online learning at the beginning of the year, or if we need to move to a cohort off campus for 48 hours or longer, or if the whole school would need to close, the way your child will likely access their class would be 2 ways. One would be through whatever learning management system your teacher uses, and I understand a lot of the middle school teachers use Google Classroom. And for those that do or don't, that will be a part of the beginning of the year, helping students understand where online can they gain that information. The second piece would be Zoom. The difference with the camera classroom system is that I, as a teacher, would not be tied to my laptop's webcam. We're going to have multiple cameras in the classroom that the teacher will have push button control over. They can move the view around very quickly, so they can set the cameras up to face the things they want students at home to see. It could be a case where for certain class periods, they may let students at home know it'd be good for you to zoom in for a good portion of the period. At other times, it might be a shorter portion of the period. The teachers also will have the ability to record, and so they can actually record and then post those. So if a student can't make a session, or if they want a student just to see a small part of it, the student can go back and revisit it. And honestly, having access to recordings like that will benefit not only our online students, but also our students here on campus. It's good to always go back and have a second chance to see things. So we're working on that system. We do plan to have it up and running by day 1. And my goal is that in these 5 rooms, it is outfitted that way. So if your child would have been in a class in one of these rooms, that is one option they'll have for online learning. As far as classes that typically wouldn't be in Sears Hall, fine arts teachers, our middle school students usually move over to the Writer Center, where we have some wonderful fine arts spaces. For the first trimester, at least, we're going to limit that movement. I've been working with fine arts faculty. They've got some wonderful plans in place, but they will be bringing their programs over to these rooms. So when it comes time, and this is especially applies to grades 7 and 8 who have fine arts as part of their first trimester rotation, those fine arts teachers will be coming to the rooms. Grade 7 and 8 also have PE during the first rotation. That is the one time that we're going to have them move out of the classroom. And Craig Pinson is coming up with some great plans to help students be physically active and distanced and healthy, either on the quad or in the gymnasium. A couple other just kind of sort of academic but sort of logistic things. The way that we've divided up Sears Hall by grade level also allows for us to identify single-use grade level restrooms. And so therefore there's not a lot of crossover between grade levels when it's time to use restrooms. There's enough restrooms in the building that they're close enough to the learning spaces that we can have a specific 6th grade restroom, 7th grade restroom, and so forth. And again, those will be single use. Students will eat lunch in their classroom spaces. We will also have time built in where we can give them some outside time. In past years, this would have been the whole middle school go out for recess at one point in time. I don't envision that level of recess will be possible, especially since we are trying to cohort, but giving each grade level a time to go out to the quad, or potentially our maintenance department is working on kind of marking off spaces in the quad. So we might be able to have multiple grade levels out there at a single time, but again, distance apart from each other. Advisory is still going to be an important part of this year. Janet and Jessica are working on that, and your child will learn as we begin the school year who their advisor is for the year. Advisory will happen on a daily basis, either in the learning space, or if a grade level has multiple advisories, they'll break out into rooms that are very near the learning space. We are not giving lockers this year. I know that's something that students often look forward to, especially those starting middle school, kind of their own space. Unfortunately, lockers just don't allow for spacing. So the fact that we're on a trimester system actually helps this, because students will need fewer things on campus on any given day. All they really need to bring with them each day is what they need for those particular classes. And so what we hope would happen is that students have a backpack that they can bring what they need for that day. They can keep it with them in that classroom they're using, and then it can go home with them at the end of the day. And we just repeat that over and over. We'll keep evaluating as the year goes on if there's other options for us, but at this point in time, that will be the best. Part of that will be technology. We do think it's important for students to have access to technology, and we have in past years done a lot of sharing of technology with computer labs, with iPads, with Chromebooks. Sharing of materials is not a good plan this year. Whether it's sharing pencils and markers all the way up to sharing technology. So we do ask that students do have technology that they can bring to school. We could, rather than letting students borrow it on a daily basis, if your family would like us to check out a piece of technology to your child for the year, we can. In fact, I'd be willing to explore, if you as a parent would prefer that technology remain mainly at school, we could find a way for that technology to remain in that classroom and be there for them every day. But they would be the ones that are using it solely, so that it doesn't have to be cleaned and used by another student. I will put in the chat later, it was in the reopening document, our educational technology person on campus, Jamie Lau, is the point of contact for that. She has a good sense of what our inventory is and what can be checked out by families. So please don't hesitate to reach out to her if that's going to help. And then finally, the last piece I want to mention with regard to that is we've done a lot of this room planning for first trimester only. Again, we're evaluating as time goes on. I did not put trimester 2 or 3 room numbers on the schedules intentionally. At this point in time, I would envision we're going to use the same rooms, or I might choose to swap up rooms if I feel like there's a better use of a room, like say a science lab room for another group. But of course, if we were to do that, there would be significant cleaning happening before we switched off cohorts. I mentioned lunch a little while ago. When lunch service does become available, and it won't be available right away, but there will be instructions that if you want to have lunch service, rather than your child coming to the cafeteria to get that, we'll make sure that gets delivered up to their classroom. And the other piece I want to mention additionally is we did a survey regarding extended day a couple weeks ago. We appreciate, we got a lot of response to that. About 80 families responded back. I will say a significant number of families said that this year they don't have a need to use extended day, or they're choosing not to use extended day. We do recognize there was a small number for them it was something they're very interested in using. We are still considering ways we could make that happen. I'll admit one of the biggest sticking points is the cohort piece, because extended day programs in the past have been divisionally based. So all the middle schoolers would be together and all the lower schoolers would be together. If we jumped right into that, all the work we're doing to separate cohorts during the day would break down. And so I would ask that you just be patient as we start the school year and see what we could potentially make available with an extended day as the school year continues. With that, here's what I'd like to do, and I assume this will be a good time to do this. I'm going to introduce a couple faculty members, have them say a few words. I think as they kind of conclude saying what they'll say, I'll start opening up the chat so that people can enter questions. And these can be questions for Seth, Marnie, or me, and Seth will kind of moderate, and we'll answer them as we go along. I would like to first mention and acknowledge there are 3 new faculty members in the middle school. We've written about these folks in EA News and Notes. You'll have an opportunity to interact with them, likely virtually, as the school year begins, just because, again, we're not going to have parents in the classroom building. But I just want to make mention, Janine Chenard is going to be teaching grades 7 and 8 language arts and grades 6 through 8 Spanish. In fact, I just met with Janine today. We walked around campus. She has some great ideas for how to engage with students right off the bat. Chris Rutger is our new middle school social studies teacher. He'll be teaching grades 5 through 8. Chris is an experienced teacher both in Illinois as well as in Africa. It will bring a great global perspective to the role. He and I were talking the other day, had a great conversation about how to take a social studies curriculum from a year long into a trimester, and I'm confident he has some really wonderful ideas. And then Brian Wrightson is our music instructor for the lower school and for grades 5 and 6. So while grade 5 and 6 music will happen later in the year and students will have an opportunity to interact with Brian. We do also have, again, I mentioned Janet and Jessica earlier, so I'd like to kind of make a formal introduction of them, even though most of you know them. They've been longtime middle school teachers, but they are also taking on new roles as well. They're going to be our deans of students. And so a dean of students essentially is responsible for all issues relating to the well-being of students. And so that's academic and social emotional. Essentially, Janet and Jessica are going to be great advocates for your children, and they're going to be great go-to people if you have questions or want to kind of create some thoughts about how to make your child's experience better. The way they're able to do that, beyond the fact that they're both just wonderful educators and wonderful people, is they work as members of the student support team. They're working closely with all advisors and the advisory system in the middle school to make sure it's a very cohesive program. They'll work with individual students and families, and they're going to set a wonderful tone for us in the middle school. So Janet is the Dean of Students for grades 5 and 6, and Jessica is the Dean of Students for grades 7 and 8. And I'm going to step aside for a moment and allow them to say a few words.
Thanks, Doug. Good evening. It's nice to say hi to new families and returning families. I hope you are enjoying a wonderful summer. Jessica and I are really looking forward to a great school year. And as deans, as Doug had mentioned, our roles are to provide collaborative support with Doug to our students and families.
The middle school is planning to continue EA's mission to provide learning that is personal and engaging and highly effective. Our goal is to provide supportive structure and guidance while establishing the independent learning, whether we're in the classroom or online.
And to kick off the year, we plan to offer some fun community building activities in each grade, in each grade level. And the two of us, Jessica and I, will be reaching out to middle school parents toward the end of next week with an email that lets families know that the welcoming activities that we are planning typically happen during an orientation that is usually the first, like a day or two before school starts, but because of the nature of the way our school year is starting, we're actually going to have that community building and welcoming activities take place the first few days on campus. And we think it'll be a great opportunity for us all to get to know each other and kind of get an idea, a feel for what the year is going to be like. And we're looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you both. With that, I'm going to hand things back over to Seth, and I have turned the chat on. So I believe if you do have a question about anything we've talked about or any other questions you have, you should be able to enter it in the chat now, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so thanks. So thanks to everybody for the presentations. I know we've been almost an hour, so certainly if people need to drop off, feel free to. I want to just point out a couple things. Just you can see in the presentations that the depth of detail that we continue to think about. So we can promise you we will continue to do that. And again, really want to encourage people to continue to read the things we send out, as Marnie said and has said a couple of times, because we're thinking things are going to be changing as things go along. So we're getting some questions in the chat here. So before we start doing that, let me tell you one piece of trivia. Another name for Mr. O'Connor Divalbus's science room is my old apartment. At 30 years ago, my wife and I lived in that apartment. So it is neater now than it used to be then. And if you stand in front of Sears Hall when you're back on campus, you'll notice there's a cable wire that runs up the front of Sears Hall. I paid for that cable wire. I just want you to know. Okay, questions. So we're going to get, I'll try to group some things here together. Doug, maybe do you want to address, you made mention of technology, and there's a question about what people might need at the beginning of the year. Do you want to touch on that? And Marnie, maybe we can give some clarity after that about the some of the policies around exposure.
Sure. So the technology, I did put in the chat after that. I put in the contact for Jamie Lau. Again, we have Chromebooks and iPads at school. We do think having a technology beyond a phone, as a parent of former middle schoolers, who didn't even have phones until 8th grade, I fully respect that most middle schoolers don't have phones or don't bring them to school. But having some sort of technology that they can access the internet with at school, so for teacher-directed activities and class-directed activities, and that they can create content with, so that they have ways to keyboard and type and go to different sites. That's what's going to be important. Again, we do have those technologies at school. Typically, we would have lent those out on daily basis. We had classroom sets of things like iPads and Chromebooks. Again, since we're not making use of the shared versions of that this year, we're more than willing to check those out for a trimester or a year. So please do contact Jamie Lau, just because we're trying to filter all of that to her. Again, Jamie is an upper school science teacher, but she also fills the role of being the educational technology coordinator for all of our campus, and works closely with all of our teachers in terms of technology. So please contact her and make a request if you'd like to borrow something, and we can have that ready for your child early in the school year.
Doug, a question came up a little bit later. Is it okay for a student to have a laptop? And certainly that's acceptable, right?
Yes, if a student were to bring their own technology to school, absolutely. That's perfect.
And a laptop will serve the purposes, right?
Yes. So a laptop, a Chromebook, an iPad, just something that has a larger screen than a phone, and something where students can create content on is what's going to be important.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please do.
Just say that just from the abilities that certain devices have, an iPad would work, but students would probably have a lot easier time on a Chromebook or a laptop.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Marnie, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the things that are showing up. I think there's a couple questions about exactly how the app will work, especially if people don't have cell phones or they ride with someone else, so you can give some color to that. And also questions about the relationship between a cohort and if somebody's sibling is exposed, and those sorts of things.
So I'm going to start with the app. If you carpool, for example, you can send the proof that your student has passed the app to either your middle school student or to the driver, right? So it's possible to take a screenshot of that and text it to somebody so that somebody can show the personnel up at the top of car line. For somebody who is coming with a high school sibling, they would for sure need to check in where the high school students are going to be checking in, which is going to be over by Edwards Hall. And then if they have not passed the screening app, or are not showing proof of that, they're not going to be allowed in the school building. So we can't have anybody in the school buildings until we know for sure that they've passed the app. But we do understand that sometimes people are coming with siblings. a parent does have to fill out the app, but it's certainly we are certainly able to take proof of it off the middle schooler's phone. So it can be on the parent's phone if a middle schooler doesn't have a phone, or it can be on the middle schooler's phone. We just need the parents to be filling it out. If that makes sense. So I think there was some questions about, siblings and a cohort. So the guidance on that, to be honest with you, is changing as we speak. So the original guidance on that is if you tested, let's say I'm a student and I have a sibling in another grade. Originally, the guidance was the sibling would have to sort of start following the quarantining protocols because they've been living with somebody who's exposed to COVID, but the rest of the cohort did not. But the guidance is changing on that, so I don't want to say that is exactly where we're going to end up. That's something new today that came out that we need to review and really make sure that we're giving you exactly the right information. It is possible that we might have to move that other cohort to remote learning as well, but I don't want to commit one way or another until we've had a little more time to read through that guidance and make sure we understand firmly what's happening. And then there was a question if somebody refuses to take a test.
Yes.
If they refuse to take the test, then they have to stay home, and the cohort would also have to stay home because we can't assume that the cohort has not been exposed to COVID.
Yeah.
So
and for
everybody take the test.
Yeah. And for how long, Marnie?
So if you are the person who is not taking, it's a little bit strange. If you're the person who's not taking the test, it's 10 days. And if you're the person who's in the cohort, it's 14 days because it could take up to 14 days for your symptoms to show. So once symptoms start showing, you're on a 10-day clock. If you've just been exposed, you're on a 14-day clock. And that is something we're going to try to put it together in this FAQ one-page sort of crib sheet for you because it gets a little bit tricky to change everything.
Go ahead, Marnie. Sorry.
And did that cover those? Because then I was going to answer a question about HVAC.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, I didn't see a question. Go ahead with that, and then I want to. We've got some questions, Doug, about the execution of PE.
Yep.
There was a question about who to contact if the student will not be in class for access to remote learning. If that's a long-term decision, you want to talk to Doug about that. If you're talking about a daily, somebody's not feeling well today decision, I think that would be the divisional secretary. But Doug, am I right about that?
Yes, I am. Please reach out to me if you're interested in having your child start the year online learning. And again, my email address is up at the top of the chat.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say once Marnie addresses HVAC, I see questions about school supplies, some PE questions, and I'll continue to watch. So yes.
And before we move on, actually, there was another question about the cohorts. Yes, we will let everybody know if a cohort has been shut down. We will let the cohort know first. So if you haven't been contacted before we send out the mass email, then it was not your cohort, right? But we're walking a fine line here too between sort of making sure we communicate in a transparent and effective manner and maintaining privacy. So we might not tell you exactly where this happened. We will, maybe you won't know it's 5th grade for an example, but you will know that a cohort has been shut down. And we're not planning at this point to communicate whether it is a faculty member or a student, again, to maintain people's sort of privacy in this instance. In terms of HVAC, we are blessed with a wide variety of buildings on campus. In varying stages of sort of modernity, right? And so Sears Hall has the least robust system, if I'm being honest. And so we are going to address that through having all of the air conditioners running all the time, probably even in the winter time, to really encourage airflow going. We're going to ask the teachers also have windows open. Again, we want to make sure the air is moving as much as possible, and there isn't duct work in Sears Hall. We have considered putting things like that into these buildings, but the age of the buildings, and it's not sort of price effective for us to do that. So we're going to do the windows, the air conditioning. Teachers are going to be asked to leave their classroom doors open as much as possible, again, to make sure that air is moving and flowing. And then we've also put air purifiers in each of the classrooms that are sort of scrubbing the air every 30 minutes. And so that's going to be in conjunction with, wearing the masks, really good hand hygiene. There's going to be hand sanitizer stations mounted outside of each classroom door. We are going to work with the teachers at the back to school meetings about, when we should have scheduled hand washing times, right? So when you come into school, before you leave school, after you eat, before you eat, things like that. So we're making sure that kids are sort of keeping, and teachers are sort of keeping their hands clean and the face coverings. And so all of that is going to combine to build out the best HVAC system we can do in Sears Hall.
There was a question just popped up about room air filters. Did you talk about the
We
air?
have the air purifiers that we're going to put.
Yeah. Okay. And then Doug, if you could, a couple questions about both timing of school supply kind of lists and then the execution of PE classes.
Absolutely. So school supplies list. So first off, I believe that a lot of families receive them actually at the end of the school year. We did make modifications to them, and they are going to be posted in EA News and Notes tomorrow. Some of the main modifications we made were taking off things that were meant to be shared by students. We also took off, sometimes on school supply lists, it's common that there might be some actual cleaning supplies on there, like a tube of Clorox wipes. We're not asking families to provide any of that this year. The school will provide that for all spaces that need it. We added on water bottles for students because while the drinking faucets will be turned off on the fountains, the bottle fillers will be available, and so we do encourage students to have water bottles with them. And then as far as what you need every trimester, there is a breakout on the list. It's not broken out by trimester, but it is broken out by class. So if you as a family choose just to buy the supplies that are necessary for the first trimester right now, you're more than welcome to do that. There's a general list of things you should purchase that will satisfy a lot of classes. And then, for example, if your child needs a binder for a second trimester class, they don't need to bring that with them until the second trimester actually begins. So those will be on EA News and Notes tomorrow. You're welcome to contact me or either Jessica or Janet if you have questions on those. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Doug. I'm sorry. I keep stepping on what you're saying.
I was going to jump over to PE. So great question.
Sorry, right.
PEs. I apologize. I had mentioned it. Historically, we would have students change for PE. We're not doing that this year. Space doesn't provide for it. Time doesn't provide for it. So students are just going to have PE and whatever they wear to school that day. The one thing I would say, of course, is if a student is wearing shoes that are not conducive to PE on the day that they have it, they should make sure they bring a pair of shoes they can easily change into in their classroom. So they can participate in activities outside or in the gym. But as far as changing full outfits, we're not doing that. That would not be a good thing to do at this point. Someone asked about PE with respect to tournaments. That maybe have to do with after-school sports. Of course, we have a sports program in the middle school. It's an after-school program. Due to what's happening around the state, in our high school and with our conference, which is the SWAC conference, the only sport that's going to be offered after school in the middle school for the beginning of the year is cross country. And we are going to allow students and families to choose how much participation they want in that. First off, being in that sport is an option, as all sports are in the middle school. But if a student simply chooses to participate on campus within our school community, that's perfectly fine. If Craig Pinson is able to put together a couple tournaments or races, and a family chooses not to have their child go to one of those because they don't want to have a larger exposure, we will fully understand that. We just want to make it available for those who are interested.
Okay, good, Doug. Thanks for that. Does that approach to PE and changing have any impact on the dress code?
Good question. At this point in time, we weren't planning on any changes. Actually, we're going to release the handbooks next week, and I will, in my final review of that, I will look back to see if we feel like a change is necessary with regard to PE. If so, it would only apply to a couple days. So maybe I'll look at seeing whether we need to modify a dress code for a day a student has a PE versus doesn't have PE. So thank you for that question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Marnie, a series of questions here about other security measures. There's a question about whether we will be taking temperatures and provision of face coverings if kids forget.
So typically Sears Hall had been wide open during the day, so that because students were coming and going. We're gonna actually have those doors locked, and we're gonna install a ring doorbell so Mrs. Strum can see when people ring the bells. We don't really anticipate there being a lot of visitors to Sears Hall. parents aren't going to be coming for this time period, all that. But we do understand that occasionally people might need to come into the building, but we are going to have that sort of stopgap so people aren't just sort of coming and going, free flowing into the building. We are not at this time planning on taking everybody's temperatures. We are asking everybody to self-certify, and this is again part of our community working together and, sort of accurately reflecting how they're feeling and what is going on every day. And we're asking everybody to do this, including our faculty. So this is not, something really sort of targeted just to the students. And then in terms of face coverings, we will have a very small amount of face coverings available for students should they lose one, should it break during the day, otherwise be damaged. But we cannot be providing face coverings for students on a regular basis. And so, I'm sure that, things happen, right? So once or twice that's going to be happening. If it becomes sort of habitual, then I suspect we might have to ask either one of the deans or Mr. Sepp to sort of intervene with the family and sort of have a good communication about why it's really, really important that a student bring in their own face covering. And I should have also mentioned before, wearing a face covering means wearing it properly, right? So covering your nose and covering your mouth, it doesn't mean on the chin, it doesn't mean around your ears. And so that is going to be something that we're going to be addressing in the student handbook, I believe, and, in other ways to make sure that the students are sort of learning to wear them properly.
A question about bringing lunches. So eventually there will be lunch service. Marnie, you might touch on this a little bit.
So I believe it's as early as Monday the 31st. So it's just the first few days we need to get up and running. And we are going to get information from Jack's Catering, who's the company we used last year. We're going to get that by Friday with some specifics that we can share with families about ordering. But it is going to be all pre-ordered. So you have to sort of plan in advance because they need to have time to get themselves organized to have everything pre-packaged individually. So I say it's the 31st, maybe it'll be a few days after that, but sort of early on in the year, we will have lunches available. You'll be ordering directly through Jack's. They'll have all of those specifics and they will make sure that, between them and us, we'll make sure that your student does have the lunch, but they will be provided, but please plan on providing your students lunch for the first, handful of days.
So everybody will provide that for themselves at the beginning. We will communicate when Jax is up and running and how that ordering process works. And we will have to be pretty insistent about the pre-ordering just because we need to have everything for obvious reasons, packaged and all of those things for everybody's safety. I feel like, so I'll just talk for a minute here. I feel like we hit most of the sentiment of what I saw. If we didn't, please feel free to jump in and add something so it pops out to me at the end. I would like to maybe just comment on one sort of theme that I don't know that we've highlighted, or I think we've highlighted through repetition, but I just want to feel compelled to say, a lot of this, one of the reasons, maybe back to how I started, one of the reasons we feel we can do this is because this endeavor depends on community. And we are nothing if not a community. That's one of the great joys of this place. And so I just feel very, very confident in that part of it. And I am so appreciative of us all looking at it that way. We all are responsible to each other in this, both all of our students, all of our adults, all of us on this Zoom, which is a combination. Very, 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 very important. There's a question popping up about masks in PE, and I think it, I don't know if Doug or Marnie wants to talk about that. We are going to, I think, ask for that at the beginning, as we are trying to build that habit. One of the things that our pediatrician, Dr. Kaufman, who worked with us on this plan, talked with us about, Marnie and I, about his practice's belief in building that habit. That's one of the things they work with they talk with their patients and parents about. So I do think we are going to ask for that at the beginning, even in PE. Am I right about that?
You are. And I would just like to throw in that Craig Pinson is fully aware of that and is planning activities appropriately with the understanding that students will have masks on.
Yep. And so we are, this is one area, as Marnie said, that, for example, there was some discussion about masks in this, in this revision of the advice that came out today. Not that people shouldn't be wearing masks, but just, exactly when and where and outside versus inside and those sorts of things. We're going to continue to look, but this is a place where we're going to build that habit. Dress code in terms of masks, Doug.
I'll just address that it shouldn't say anything inappropriate that we wouldn't want on your other clothing as well. We are not putting a dress code for masks in terms of patterns or colors or things like that. Again, like Ms. Cutt mentioned, masks that are inappropriate in terms of health. So it was bandanas, the masks that have the one-way valve, neck gaiters, the type of thing you would pull up over your mouth. The fabric in those is actually shown to worsen spread as opposed to keeping it in. But in terms of what color your mask is or if it has a pattern on it, that's perfectly fine.
I've been, this might be a time for a fashion show. I have this mask I was given that has foxes on it. So you'll see that. There's an I Love EA mask that I was given. There was one with a big hot dog on it that I was given that you'll see. And then I was also given one to prepare for Halloween. You might be able to see that's jack-o'-lanterns. And then, I've never been so fashionable. So this is a fantastic opportunity for me. We're wearing them all year.
Yeah, if I can just pitch in, as a parent of two children, I would say just make mask purchasing part of the back to school shopping, and it's okay to let the students show some personality in their mask. Let it be something that they actually do want to wear. If you have to purchase several of them so that you can have a washing cycle for them, I think that'll just add itself to that habit.
I think a lot of great questions. I don't mean to imply others aren't. Really good question about cold flu symptoms and no known COVID exposure. Is a COVID test required to return to school? I think that answer is going to be yes, Marnie. Am I right about that?
I think so too. Based on my sort of skimming of the guidance, I think that is where they are headed. Yes.
Yeah. So we are gonna continue to look at that. I appreciate the sentiment of that question because we've often talked about. I think society has talked about, the problem that among the many problems with COVID is the fact that it looks like basically anything else you might have. And so this is certainly going to be a work in progress in which we're going to err on the side of caution for reasons that I hope everybody can appreciate, but also, is why we are so insistent on having a good ability to transition back and forth from in-person to connected learning. To Doug's point about the schedule that is specifically tailored to that, and to all of these details, that is part of the reason why we know we need to be able to go back and forth. It's never going to be so important for us to be adaptable. And so thank you to the number of you who have put in the chat, the comments about the good work that so many people have done. I want to echo that. Thank you. I am so appreciative of being part of a community that is trying to do this the right way. I don't want to cut things off. So the question about allergies and if you have a doctor's note, we do think if there's a doctor's note, Marnie, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting this right. If somebody has a doctor's note for something that is an ongoing condition, I might be reading into the question some, but we can work with that, we believe. Is that true?
That is true, yes.
So, you have something like allergies that might show some of those symptoms. If a doctor is saying that's, we can work with, is that?
That's correct, yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're going to learn together. Are we going to provide testing sites? I don't want to make sure we're answering the right questions. We are not going to do testing on the campus, if that's what the question is. I don't know if we're going to have a bank of where tests are available. I know that's a constantly changing thing too. But we are not planning on doing or offering testing here, if that's what that question is.
Or are we going to require testing to come back? I mean, do require testing to start the school if that's what you're asking for? If it's because your student has developed a symptom, then you would have to seek medical guidance from your physician and or one of these, pop-up sites or.
Yeah, and Rhonda, thank you. That I know the Department of Health website does post the testing sites even as they're changing, and ones are, popping up or 1 day a week kind of things. Yeah, maybe I misread the Ms. Barnett's question about providing testing sites, but just wanted to make sure.
It is not required prior to the first day.
Yeah, not required prior to the first day. The test really, everybody agrees is a snapshot of a period of time, of that moment, and so and I will say, in developing these plans about the self-certification and the not having testing, or frankly asking people to self-quarantine before school starts, we've relied on a lot of work with a lot of outside organizations to figure out best practice. All of this stuff has been stuff we've talked about, not trying to diminish the questions, but it's a very, very complicated thing. So thank you to everybody. Maybe give a minute more in case any questions pop up. Let me reiterate while we're doing that. I'll put in here my email. And I know that I think everyone else who works here on the chat has put in their emails. And we do really, I want to reiterate what was said a couple of times. Please do reach out. We think we have a plan in place that if the societal conditions allow it, we can be open and stay open. That may not mean every class every day, but we feel like we have a plan in place that has got the right pieces to it, and we are going to continue to adapt it. I think I don't see any other questions. Do reach out to us. Thank you for spending the time. Thank you for being at Elgin Academy. Thank you to the Academy people who were on this. I'm really excited to have middle school deans of students, by the way. I think that's going to be a tremendous asset. I'm excited about those two people, but don't tell them that I said that. I think we've got a great structure in place that is really going to serve kids well, both now and for a long time. So thank you to everybody. Thanks for being here. I can't tell you how much I can't wait to see you. And unless Doug, Marnie, Janet, Jessica, anybody else has anything, I think we might be good.
Yep. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Look forward to seeing you soon. Kids, it's especially good